The space around the dying star of Kethamor burned with the light of 1,000 explosions. Captain Tai Min watched from the bridge of his battleship as another allied vessel broke apart under enemy fire. The massive Scarith warrior gripped his command chair with clawed hands, his scaled face showing the strain of watching his people die. "Report from the left wing," his communications officer hissed through sharp teeth. "The Thrax hive ship Endless Hunt is taking heavy damage. War Leader Bora requests immediate support." Taemin snarled in frustration. There was no support to give. His own ship, the Crimson Fang, had lost half its weapons in the first hour of battle. Around him, the bridge crew worked desperately to keep their systems running while enemy fire rained down on their shields. The enemy was unlike anything the Deathworld Alliance had ever faced. The Void Swarm moved like a living thing, but it was made of metal and circuits. Millions of black ships swarmed through space, each one learning from the last attack, adapting to every weapon the Alliance threw at them. "Captain, incoming transmission from Commander Sunwoo of the Shattered Light," the communications officer reported. The hologram of a tall, crystalline figure appeared in front of Taimin. Sunwoo's body was made of living crystal that glowed with inner light, but that light was dim now, flickering with exhaustion. "Taimin, we cannot hold this position much longer," Sunwoo said, his voice ringing like broken glass. "My Nethex warriors have fired everything we have. The swarm just keeps coming. How many ships have we lost?" Taimin asked, though he feared the answer. 200 in the last hour alone. The swarm learns too fast. Every time we hit them with something new, they adapt within minutes. By the time we reload, they are already immune to our weapons. Another explosion lit up the view screen as a Thrax fighter squadron vanished under a wave of enemy fire. Taimin could hear Bora screaming orders to her remaining forces through the radio chatter. The insect-like war leader never retreated, but even her courage could not stop the endless tide of mechanical death. "All ships, fall back to the second defensive line," Taimin ordered. He hated the words even as he spoke them. The Scarith did not retreat. They fought until victory or death. But this was not a battle they could win through strength alone. The 3 fleets of the Deathworld Alliance pulled back, leaving the wreckage of their dead floating in space. The Void Swarm did not pursue. It never pursued. It simply consumed what it had killed and moved on to the next target. The Alliance had been the terror of the galaxy for 1,000 years. The Scarith were born warriors, raised on a world where everything wanted to kill them. The Nethex were living weapons, their crystal bodies able to channel energy that could crack planets. The Thrax bred soldiers by the millions, each one willing to die for the hive. Together, they had conquered star systems and built an empire based on strength. No enemy had ever stood against them for long. Pirates fled at the sight of their ships. Other races paid tribute rather than face their wrath. But the Void Swarm was different. It did not fear them. It did not negotiate. It simply came, consumed, and moved on. Entire worlds had vanished, their populations absorbed into the growing mechanical army. "Set course for the fortress world," Taimin commanded. "We need to regroup." The journey to Keth Moran took 3 days. The massive world served as the Alliance's military center, covered in weapon factories and training grounds. Its surface was scarred by centuries of war games and weapons testing. It was the perfect place for the greatest warriors in the galaxy to call home, but now it felt like a tomb. The surviving ships limped into orbit around the fortress world. Taimin looked at the numbers and felt his heart sink. They had started the battle with over 1,000 vessels. Less than 400 had made it back. The emergency council meeting was held in the Great War Hall, a massive chamber carved from black stone. Representatives of all 3 races gathered around a circular table, marked with the scars of old battles. War leader Bora arrived first. The Thrax leader was smaller than the others, but her 6 arms moved constantly, checking weapons and planning attacks even while she sat. Her compound eyes reflected the light like mirrors, showing no emotion. But Taimin could smell her anger in the air. Commander Sunwoo materialized in a shower of crystal shards, his body reforming from pure energy. The Nethex could travel through their communication networks, becoming light itself. It was a useful ability, but it took great power and Sunwoo's glow was weak. "We are losing this war," Bora said without waiting for formal greetings. "The swarm has taken 12 more systems while we fought at Kethmore. My scouts report it is moving toward the core worlds. Our weapons are useless, Sunwoo added, his voice echoing in the chamber. Every time we damage them, they learn. By the next battle, they are stronger. Taemin nodded grimly. The problem is not our strength. We are still the greatest warriors in the galaxy. The problem is that we are fighting as 3 separate armies instead of 1. The Scarith do not fight alongside others, Bora snapped. We are hunters, not followers. And the Nethex have never needed help in battle, Sunwoo said proudly. Neither have the Thrax, Bora agreed. It was the same argument they had been having for months. Each race was proud of their fighting style. Each believed they were the strongest. They worked together when they had to, but they never truly fought as one. Pride will not save us from extinction, Taemin growled. The swarm does not care about our honor. It only wants to consume us. Before anyone could respond, an alarm began to sound. The deep bass note echoed through the chamber, warning of approaching ships. Unknown vessel detected at the edge of the system, a voice announced over the communication system. Single ship, unknown design. It is requesting permission to approach. The 3 leaders looked at each other in surprise. Who would come here now? The Alliance had few friends in the galaxy. Most other races feared them too much to visit willingly. What kind of ship? Taemin asked. Small, maybe 1,000 crew. The design is unlike anything in our databases. They claimed to be from a world called Earth. None of them had heard of Earth. The galaxy was vast, and new species were sometimes discovered in the outer regions. But what could a single unknown ship want with the Alliance? Allow them to approach, Taemin decided. But keep weapons ready. As they waited, Taemin could not shake the feeling that something important was about to happen. The Alliance was dying, their enemies growing stronger every day. They needed something new, something the swarm had never seen before. Perhaps this unknown ship would provide answers, or perhaps it would just be one more funeral to attend. Outside, the stars continued to burn, and somewhere in the darkness, the void swarm continued its endless hunger. The unknown ship appeared on the main view screen of the Great War Hall like a metal ghost against the stars. Captain Taemin studied its design with the eye of a veteran warrior. The vessel was sleek and simple, built for speed rather than intimidation. It carried weapons, but they seemed almost modest compared to the massive guns of Alliance warships. They are requesting permission to dock, the communications officer reported. The ship identifies itself as the UES Wanderer from the planet Earth. Earth, Commander Sunwoo repeated, his crystal body flickering as he accessed the Alliance databases. No records of this world or this species. War Leader Bora clicked her mandibles together in annoyance. Why do we waste time with unknowns? We have a war to fight. Because we are losing that war, Taemin replied sharply. Perhaps these strangers have something useful to offer. The docking process took an hour. The Wanderer's crew seemed careful and professional, following all standard protocols. When the airlock finally opened, the Alliance leaders got their first look at humans. Captain Hyunwoo stepped through the airlock with calm confidence. He was smaller than any of the Alliance warriors, with soft skin and no natural weapons. His crew followed behind him. Lieutenant Ji-won, a young woman with alert eyes. Chief Science Officer Eun-young, an older man carrying a datapad. And Communications Specialist Min-ho, who looked around with obvious curiosity. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us, Captain Hyunwoo said through a universal translator device. His voice was steady and respectful. We detected the massive energy signatures from your battles with the Void Swarm from across the galaxy. The Alliance leaders exchanged glances. These humans seemed remarkably calm for beings who had just entered a war zone. You know of the Swarm? Taemin asked. We know they are an ancient mechanical plague that consumes civilizations, Eun-jung answered. Our long-range sensors have been tracking their expansion for months. They have destroyed dozens of star systems. And yet you came here anyway, Sunwoo observed. Are your people warriors? Captain Hyunwoo smiled slightly. Not in the way you might expect. We are explorers, scientists, diplomats, but we have fought wars before. Bora made a dismissive sound. One small ship. How many warriors do you have? 1,000? 10,000? Our ship carries a crew of 800, Lieutenant Ji-won replied. But Earth has a population of 12 billion. 12 billion, Taemin repeated. It was an impressive number, but numbers alone did not win battles. What weapons do you possess? Standard plasma cannons, missile systems, defensive shields, Captain Hyunwoo said. Nothing that would impress warriors of your reputation. The Alliance leaders looked at each other with barely hidden disappointment. These humans seemed pleasant enough, but they were clearly not the help the Alliance needed. One ship with primitive weapons would make little difference against the endless hordes of the Void Swarm. We appreciate your offer, Taemin began diplomatically. But this war requires strength beyond what your people seem to possess. Perhaps, Captain Hyunwoo said calmly. But before you decide, would you be willing to share your battle records with us? We would like to study how the swarm fights. Study? Bora laughed harshly. The time for study is past. The swarm adapts too quickly for analysis to matter. Every enemy has patterns, Yunjung said quietly, even adaptive ones. Sometimes an outside perspective can see things that those close to the problem cannot. It was a reasonable request, and the Alliance had little to lose. Sunwoo transmitted the battle records to the human ship. Thousands of hours of combat data, showing the gradual defeat of the greatest military force in the galaxy. The humans spent the next day studying the information. Captain Hyunwoo and his crew worked without rest, analyzing every detail of every battle. The Alliance leaders watched with growing skepticism. What could these soft aliens see that trained warriors had missed? When the humans returned to the war hall, they looked tired but excited. You are fighting 3 separate wars, Captain Hyunwoo announced without ceremony. Explain, Taemin demanded. Navigator So Young stepped forward with a holographic display. The Scarith favor direct assault tactics. The Netheks use precision energy strikes. The Thrax employ swarming maneuvers. Each approach is effective individually. But the Void Swarm has learned to counter each style because you use them in isolation, communications specialist Minho added. It adapts to the Scarith attack pattern, then to the Netheks pattern, then to the Thrax pattern. By the time you coordinate, it is ready for everything you can do. The Alliance leaders stared at the display showing their battle movements. The humans had mapped out their tactics with surprising accuracy. What do you suggest? Sunwoo asked, his voice carrying a hint of interest. Fight as 1 army, not 3, Lieutenant Jiwon said. Use your different strengths at the same time, in ways the swarm cannot predict or adapt to quickly. Bora buzzed angrily. The Thrax do not take orders from other species. Neither do the Scarith, Taemin growled. Nor the Netheks, Sunwoo agreed. Captain Hyunwoo nodded, as if he had expected this reaction. We are not asking anyone to take orders. We are suggesting coordination. Each of your species remains independent, but you work together toward common goals. And who would coordinate this grand alliance? Taemin asked suspiciously. We would, if you are willing, Captain Hyunwoo replied. Humans have experience working with diverse groups. It is one of our strengths. The suggestion was met with silence. The Alliance leaders had never worked under outside leadership. Their pride rebelled against the very idea, but then reports began arriving from the outer systems. 3 more worlds had fallen to the Void Swarm in the past day. The mechanical plague was accelerating its advance, growing stronger with each victory. 1 test, Taemin said finally. 1 battle. If your coordination proves useful, we will consider expanding the arrangement. There is a swarm harvesting fleet at the mining world of Velthar, Engineer Dong-hyun said, consulting his datapad, a small enough target to test the concept without risking major forces. The Velthar system has good defensive positions, Medical Officer Hee-jin added. If the coordination fails, retreat will be possible. Bora clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. My scouts report the swarm force there is small but growing. If we are to test this human theory, better to do it soon. Sunwoo flickered with decision. Very well. 1 battle. But if your coordination fails, the Alliance will handle the war in our own way. Understood. Captain Hyunwoo agreed. We will need to install communication equipment on your ships to enable real-time coordination. Our engineers will supervise any modifications, Taemin warned. As the meeting ended, the Alliance leaders departed to prepare their forces. Each harbored doubts about trusting their warriors to unknown aliens. But desperation made strange alliances necessary. Captain Hyunwoo remained in the war hall with his crew, studying star charts and tactical displays. Lieutenant Jiwon approached him quietly. Do you really think this will work? She asked. It has to, he replied. These are good warriors, but they are losing because they cannot adapt as quickly as their enemy. If we can help them think differently, we might give them the edge they need. And if we cannot? Captain Hyunwoo looked out at the stars. where somewhere in the darkness the void swarm continued its endless advance. Then we will all die together, and at least we will have tried something new. The preparations began immediately. Human technicians worked alongside Alliance engineers to install coordination systems. For the first time in their history, the three greatest warrior races in the galaxy prepared to fight as one. Whether it would be enough remained to be seen. The combined fleet gathered at the edge of the Velthar system like a collection of different predators forced to hunt together. Captain Timon looked at the tactical display from his position on the bridge of the Crimson Fang and wondered if the humans understood what they were asking. 20 Scarith battleships floated in tight formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons designed for close combat. Each ship was built like a fortress, meant to charge into enemy lines and tear them apart with brute force. 15 Nethex crystal ships hung in perfect geometric patterns, their translucent hulls glowing with stored energy. These vessels were precision instruments, able to focus devastating power on single targets from vast distances. 30 Thrax hive ships swarmed around the larger vessels like angry insects. Each ship carried thousands of small fighters that could overwhelm enemies through sheer numbers and coordination. And in the center of this deadly collection, the small human ship Wanderer looked almost fragile by comparison. All ships. "This is Captain Hyunwoo," came the human's voice over the new communication system. "Communications check, please confirm you can receive coordination signals." One by one, the Alliance ships confirmed their readiness. Engineer Dong Hyun had worked with their technicians for days to install the necessary equipment. The humans called it a tactical network, allowing real-time coordination between all vessels. "Approaching the Velthar system now," Navigator So Young reported. "Void swarm forces detected. Approximately 50 vessels, harvesting operations in progress." Taman studied the enemy formation on his tactical display. The swarm ships moved in their typical pattern, stripping resources from the mining stations while smaller vessels patrolled the area. It was a standard operation they had seen many times before. "War Leader Bo-Ra, your thoughts on the enemy disposition?" Captain Hyunwoo asked over the communication channel. "Standard harvesting formation," Bo-Ra replied from her hive ship. "The patrol ships will engage first while the harvesters complete their work. If we charge directly, they will adapt to our attack pattern and call reinforcements." Commander Sunwoo, "What do your sensors detect?" "Energy signatures suggest they are almost finished with the resource extraction." Sunwoo's crystal voice rang through the speakers. "We have perhaps 1 hour before they move to the next target." Captain Hyunwoo's voice remained calm and professional. "Very well. Instead of using our traditional approaches separately, we will combine them in a way the swarm has not seen before." Medical Officer Hyojin's voice joined the conversation. "Captain Taemin, your Scarith ships will begin the attack as expected. Charge directly at their patrol line." "As expected," Taemin growled. "We are not bait for your scheme, human." "Not bait," Weapons Specialist Jae-sung clarified. "The primary attack. But while the swarm focuses on adapting to your assault pattern, the other forces will strike from unexpected angles." The plan was unlike anything the Alliance had attempted before. Typically, each species fought in its own way, using tactics that had served them for centuries. The humans wanted them to coordinate their attacks so closely that the swarm would not have time to adapt to any single approach. "Commander Sunwoo, your crystal ships will charge their main weapons but hold fire until the swarm begins adapting to the Scarith attack," Communications Specialist Min Ho explained. "At that moment, you will strike their harvester ships from maximum range." "And my fighters?" Bora demanded. "Your swarms will launch when the swarm's attention is divided between the frontal assault and the long-range bombardment," Lieutenant Jiwon added. "You will hit their patrol ships from the sides, preventing them from protecting the harvesters." It was a complex plan that required perfect timing. Taemin had his doubts, but the alternative was to continue losing battles against an enemy that grew stronger each day. "All ships, begin approach," Captain Hyunwoo ordered. "Remember, this only works if we trust each other." The Scarith battleships accelerated toward the enemy formation, their engines leaving trails of fire in the darkness. Taemin felt the familiar surge of battle excitement as his warriors prepared for combat. This was what they were born for. "Enemy is responding," Chief Science Officer Eun-jung reported. "Patrol ships moving to intercept. Swarm adaptation algorithms are analyzing Scarith attack patterns." The first exchange of fire lit up space with brilliant explosions. The Scarith ships took hits but pressed forward, their heavy armor absorbing damage that would destroy lesser vessels. The Void Swarm responded exactly as predicted, adapting its formation to counter the direct assault. Now, Sunwoo, Captain Hyunwoo said quietly. 15 crystal ships opened fire simultaneously, their energy beams reaching across space to strike the harvester vessels. The swarm had not expected long-range attacks while dealing with the close-quarters battle, and several harvesters exploded under the concentrated fire. Bo-Ra, launch your swarms. Thousands of small fighters poured from the Thrax hive ships like angry hornets. They swept around the main battle, hitting the swarm patrol ships from directions the mechanical minds had not calculated. The enemy formation began to break apart under the multi-directional assault. "It is working," Taemin breathed, hardly believing what he was seeing. The swarm ships were struggling to adapt to 3 different attack patterns happening at once. Their responses were confused, contradictory, but the humans were not finished. "All ships, execute pattern rotation," Captain Hyunwoo commanded. "Scarith ships fall back and provide covering fire. Nethek ships move to close range. Thrax fighters begin high-speed strafing runs." The fleet reorganized itself in the middle of battle. Ships that had been charging forward suddenly provided support fire. Vessels that had been fighting at long range closed for direct combat. The careful formation of fighters shifted into chaotic attack patterns. The Void Swarm's adaptation algorithms went haywire. Every time they began to counter one tactic, the humans changed the approach. The mechanical minds that had conquered star systems could not keep up with the constantly shifting strategy. "Enemy formation is collapsing," Tactical Coordinator Ye Jin reported with excitement. "Harvester ships are attempting to withdraw." "Do not let them escape," Bo-Ra snarled. "They carry the resources of an entire mining world." "Agreed," Sunwoo added. "If they return to the main swarm with intelligence about our new tactics, the advantage will be lost." The combined fleet pursued the fleeing harvesters, maintaining their coordinated assault pattern. Within an hour, every swarm vessel in the system had been destroyed. For the first time in months, the Alliance had achieved a complete victory without significant losses. The celebration on the communication channels was brief, but genuine. Warriors who had known only defeat suddenly remembered what winning felt like. "Well done, all ships," Captain Hyunwoo said. "Return to the rally point for debriefing." As the fleet regrouped, Taemin found himself looking at the small human ship with new respect. These soft aliens had done something no Alliance strategist had managed. They had found a way to fight the Void Swarm and win. "Captain Hyunwoo," he said over the communication channel, "the Scarith acknowledge your skill in battle. This coordination, it has possibilities." "The Netheks agree," Sunwoo added, his crystal voice carrying notes of surprise. "To see our enemies confused and defeated instead of adapting to our attacks, it is most satisfying." "My warriors are pleased," Bo-Ra said simply, which from a Thrax leader was high praise indeed. Captain Hyunwoo's response was characteristically modest. "The plan worked because each of your species contributed their strengths at the right moment. The coordination was just a matter of timing. But Taemin knew it was more than timing. The humans had seen patterns that warrior minds had missed. They had found a way to turn the Alliance's greatest weakness, their inability to fight as one, into their greatest strength." "What now?" Sunwoo asked. "One battle does not win a war." "No," Captain Hyunwoo agreed, "but it proves the concept works. If you are willing to continue this cooperation, we can begin planning larger operations." Strategic analyst Byung-ho joined the conversation. "Intelligence reports suggest several major swarm fleets operating in Alliance territory. Each one is larger than the force we just defeated, but the same principles should apply. The possibility of actually winning the war seemed incredible after months of defeat. But the evidence was clear. Working together, the Alliance was stronger than the sum of its parts. The Alliance Council will need to approve expanded cooperation," Taemin said. "This goes against centuries of tradition. Traditions that are getting us killed," Bo-Ra pointed out bluntly. As the fleet set course for home, word of the victory at Velthar began to spread through Alliance space. For the first time in the war, there was hope that the Void Swarm could be stopped. But in the dark regions of space, the mechanical plague was already adapting to this new threat. The emergency council meeting lasted 18 hours. In the great war hall of Kethmoran, the leaders of the Alliance argued with a passion that shook the ancient stone walls. Outside, their fleets gathered in the largest assembly of ships in galactic history, waiting for a decision that would determine the fate of billions. Captain Taman slammed his clawed fist on the council table, leaving deep gouges in the metal surface. The Scarith do not abandon allies in battle. If the humans will fight beside us, we will fight beside them. The Nethex agree, Commander Sun Wu declared, his crystal body flaring with bright light. These humans showed us how to win when we thought only defeat was possible. Honor demands we stand with them. War leader Bora clicked her mandibles in frustration. Honor will not save our worlds if this gamble fails. The swarm fleet is larger than anything we have faced. We could lose everything. We are already losing everything, Captain Hyunwoo said quietly from his position at the far end of the table. The void swarm was consuming the galaxy before we met. At least now we have a chance to stop them. The numbers were staggering. Long-range sensors showed the approaching swarm armada contained over 10 million vessels of various sizes, all centered around the massive command ship that dwarfed even the largest Alliance dreadnoughts. The mechanical plague had gathered its forces from across the galaxy for this final assault. Our combined fleets number less than 50,000 ships, strategic analyst Byung Ho reported grimly. We are outnumbered 200 to 1. Numbers are not everything, Dr. Kyung Ho insisted, though his voice carried little confidence. The swarm's greatest strength is also its weakness. All those ships depend on the central command unit for coordination. If we can destroy it, the entire fleet becomes vulnerable. Captain Young-soo studied the tactical displays with the eye of a veteran commander. The problem is reaching the command ship. It will be protected by layers of defensive screens and millions of escort vessels. Then we make our own path, Admiral Wanbin declared. The human officer had been promoted to overall fleet command just hours before, chosen for his experience in coordinating diverse forces. We use every trick we have learned, every advantage we have gained. The plan that emerged was desperate and brilliant in equal measure. The combined Alliance and human fleets would meet the Void Swarm at Earth's solar system, using the planets and asteroids as defensive positions. But instead of trying to fight the entire enemy fleet at once, they would focus everything on a single objective, destroying the central command ship. The Scarith and Nethex fleets will create a corridor through the enemy formations. Tactical coordinator Ye Jin explained to the assembled commanders. The Thrax swarms will provide screening and harassment to keep the escort vessels busy. And the human ships? Taman asked. We will coordinate the assault and provide the final strike force, Admiral Wanbin replied. But this only works if everyone plays their part perfectly. The journey to Earth took 2 days of hard travel through hyperspace. The human homeworld appeared on the view screens as a blue and white jewel against the black of space, orbited by space stations and defense platforms that seemed pitifully small compared to the coming storm. Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Wanderer, looking at his homeworld through eyes that might never see it again. Around the solar system, the Alliance fleets took their positions. Scarith battleships anchored themselves near Jupiter's moons. Nethex crystal ships created geometric patterns in the asteroid belt. Thrax hive ships swarmed through the outer planets like clouds of living metal. Long-range sensors detect the swarm fleet. Navigator So Young reported. They will arrive in 6 hours. The waiting was the hardest part. Warriors who lived for battle found themselves checking weapons and systems repeatedly, trying to burn off nervous energy. The humans spent the time in quiet preparation, many of them recording messages for families they might never see again. When the Void Swarm finally arrived, it came like a wave of darkness that blotted out the stars. The sheer size of the enemy fleet was overwhelming, stretching across space in formations that seemed to have no end. At their center, the command ship moved like a mechanical moon, its surface covered with weapons that could crack planets. All ships. This is Admiral Wanbin, came the voice over the communication network. Remember, our only target is the command ship. Everything else is secondary. The battle began with the Scarith charge. 5,000 battleships accelerated toward the enemy fleet with the fury of an avalanche. They smashed into the swarm's outer defenses like a hammer, their weapons blazing as they carved a path through mechanical defenders. Scarith fleet is taking heavy casualties, communications specialist Minho reported, but they are holding the corridor open. The Nethex crystal ships open fire from maximum range, their energy beams reaching across the solar system to strike at the command ship's escorts. Each shot was placed with surgical precision, eliminating key defensive positions while the Scarith pressed their attack. Then the Thrax swarms launched from their hive ships like living storms. Millions of small fighters swept through the battlefield, overwhelming swarm interceptors through sheer numbers. They could not match the enemy's firepower, but they created chaos that disrupted the mechanical coordination. Enemy adaptation algorithms are struggling, Dr. Kyung-ho reported from the science station. The scale of the battle is beyond their processing capacity, but the Void Swarm was learning even under pressure. The command ship began deploying new weapons, energy fields that disrupted the Alliance coordination networks and turned their greatest advantage against them. Communication network is failing, Tactical Coordinator Ye Jin announced. We are losing coordination between fleets. Admiral Wanbin made the hardest decision of the battle. All human ships prepare for final assault. We go in alone. The remaining human vessels, less than a dozen ships against millions of enemies, accelerated toward the massive command ship. The Wanderer led the way, followed by the Determination, the Discovery, and the other vessels that had become the heart of the coordinated fleet. This is insane, Lieutenant Ji-won said quietly as enemy fire filled the space around them. Insane is all we have left, Captain Hunwoo replied. The human ships flew through the battle like arrows shot from a bow, their smaller size allowing them to slip between the massive swarm vessels. Alliance ships that could still receive signals provided covering fire, but the humans were essentially on their own. Pilot Sung-min pushed the Wanderer to its limits, dodging between energy beams and missile salvos as they approached the command ship. Engineer Haewon worked frantically to keep the engines running as system after system took damage. We are not going to make it, Weapons Specialist Jae Sung reported. The defensive fire is too heavy. That was when the impossible happened. From across the battlefield, Alliance ships began breaking formation and following the human vessels. Scarith battleships abandoned their defensive positions to provide escort. Death-X crystal ships materialized alongside the human fleet. Thrax fighters formed protective screens around the advancing vessels. The warriors of the Alliance had made their choice. They would not let their human allies die alone. Captain Taemin's voice crackled over the damaged communication system. Scarith fleet will clear the final approach. All ships follow us to glory or death. Commander Sunwoo's crystal ships focused their fire on the command ship's main weapons, creating gaps in the defensive fire. Nethek's forces providing covering fire. Strike now while the path is clear. War leader Bora's fighters swarmed over the command ship's surface, attacking point defenses and sensor arrays. Thrax swarms are disrupting enemy targeting systems. You have minutes at most. The Wanderer and the surviving human ships accelerated toward the massive command ship, protected by the sacrifice of their alien allies. The plan had been to use conventional weapons against the enemy's weak points, but as they closed the final distance, Captain Hyunwoo realized conventional weapons would not be enough. All ships, ramming speed, he ordered quietly. The human vessels, damaged and outgunned, had one advantage the mechanical minds could not calculate: the willingness to sacrifice everything for others. The Wanderer and her sister ship struck the command ship's central core like bullets fired at close range, their fusion reactors overloading on impact. The explosion lit up the solar system like a new star being born. The massive command ship broke apart under the combined detonations, its central intelligence destroyed in seconds. Without their controlling mind, the Void Swarm fleet became confused and directionless. Alliance ships that had been losing the battle suddenly found enemies that could not coordinate or adapt. The mechanical plague that had consumed civilizations across the galaxy was reduced to scattered groups of mindless drones. The battle for Earth was over, but the cost had been enormous. Half the Alliance fleet was gone, and every human ship that had made the final assault was destroyed. The victory had been bought with the lives of hundreds of thousands of warriors. In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched for survivors and medical teams treated the wounded, the leaders of what remained of the Alliance gathered on a damaged space station orbiting Earth. News of the victory at Velthar spread through Alliance space like wildfire. For the first time in months, there was good news to share, and the warrior races celebrated as only they knew how. On Scarith worlds, great feasts were held in honor of the battle. Nethek's crystal cities rang with harmonic songs of triumph. Thrax hives buzzed with excitement as they prepared for more coordinated fights. But the celebration was short-lived. Captain Taemin stood in the Great War Hall, studying the latest intelligence reports with growing concern. The holographic display showed the movements of void swarm fleets across Alliance territory, and the pattern was disturbing. "They are learning," he said grimly as Captain Hyunwoo and the other human officers joined him. "Look at these formations." The display showed 3 major swarm fleets moving toward Alliance strongholds. But instead of the usual harvesting patterns, they were traveling in tight, defensive formations designed to resist coordinated attacks. "The swarm intelligence has analyzed our victory at Velthar," Chief Science Officer Yoon Jung observed, studying the data. "They are adapting their overall strategy, not just their individual ship tactics." Commander Sun Woo materialized beside them in a shower of crystal light. His glow was brighter than before, reflecting the renewed hope among his people, but his voice carried worry. "My scouts report that swarm forces are no longer operating independently. They are coordinating their movements across multiple systems." War Leader Bora arrived with her usual directness. "The enemy is mimicking our coordination. They saw our success and copied it." Captain Hyunwoo nodded thoughtfully. "It was inevitable. The swarm learns from every encounter. But this also creates opportunities." "What opportunities?" Taemin demanded. "They are using our own strategy against us." "Yes, but they are machines," Lieutenant Jiwon replied. "They can copy our tactics, but they cannot think like we do. They learn patterns, but they cannot understand innovation." Communications specialist Minho brought up a star chart showing the approaching swarm fleets. "The good news is that more human ships have arrived. We now have a full task force to work with." The human reinforcements had been arriving steadily over the past week. The cruiser Determination under Captain Young Soo had brought additional coordination specialists. The science vessel Discovery, commanded by Captain Soo Jin, carried researchers who were studying void swarm technology. Several smaller ships provided support and logistics. "How many human vessels total?" Sun Woo asked. 15 ships, approximately 12,000 personnel, Captain Young Soo answered as he joined the group. His ship specialized in rapid tactical adaptation, and his crew had already begun working with Alliance forces. "Still a small number compared to our fleets," Bora pointed out. "Numbers are not everything," Dr. Kyung-ho said as he approached with Captain Soo-jin. The scientist carried a datapad filled with research notes. "We have been analyzing the swarm technology recovered from Velthar. There are weaknesses we can exploit." The group gathered around as Dr. Kyung-ho activated a holographic display showing the internal structure of a swarm vessel. "The Void Swarm uses a distributed intelligence system," he explained. "Each ship contains part of the overall consciousness, but they share information through quantum communication links. When we disrupt those links, they become much less effective." "How do we disrupt them?" Taemin asked. Captain Soo-jin stepped forward. "By combining Alliance materials with human engineering techniques. The Nethex crystal technology can be modified to create interference patterns. The Scarith armor plating contains minerals that block quantum signals. The Thrax bioships produce electromagnetic fields that confuse mechanical systems." It was an intriguing possibility, but Lieutenant Commander Da-hee raised a practical concern. "Modifying our ships will take time. The swarm fleets will reach Alliance core worlds within days. Then we fight with what we have while preparing for what comes next," Captain Hyunwoo decided. "But this time we need to think beyond single battles. The swarm is coordinating across multiple systems. We need to do the same." The plan that emerged over the next several hours was ambitious beyond anything the Alliance had attempted. Instead of fighting 3 separate battles against the approaching swarm fleets, they would coordinate attacks across all 3 systems simultaneously. Chief Tactical Officer Seung-wan outlined the strategy using a massive holographic display. "The Scarith First Fleet will engage the enemy at the Morketh system, drawing their attention with a frontal assault. At the same moment, the Nethex Crystal Guard will strike at the Velnox system from long range. The Thrax war swarms will hit the Third Fleet at Kasara using speed and numbers. But here's the key," strategic analyst Byung-ho added. "All 3 battles will be coordinated by human command ships using our new integration protocols. When one fleet gains an advantage, the others will shift tactics to exploit weaknesses across all theaters." It was a complex operation that required perfect timing and communication across vast distances. The quantum communication network that Dr. Kyung-ho's team had developed would allow real-time coordination between systems light years apart. "The risk is enormous," Sun Woo observed. If the coordination fails, we will lose 3 fleets instead of 1. If we continue fighting separately, we will lose all 3 anyway, Bora replied. The swarm is learning. We must learn faster. Preparations began immediately. The Alliance fleets dispersed to their assigned systems while human coordination teams took position on key ships. The quantum communication network came online, linking every vessel in the combined force. Captain Taimeen found himself working closely with Lieutenant Commander Da He, who had been assigned to coordinate Scarith tactics. The young human woman showed no fear of the massive alien warriors, treating them as equals and earning their respect through competence rather than intimidation. Your warriors fight with great courage, she observed as they planned the assault on Morketh. But courage alone cannot win against an enemy that learns from every mistake. Then what can? Taimon asked. Unpredictability, she replied. The swarm expects patterns. We will give them chaos. In the Velnok system, Commander Sunwoo worked with Tactical Coordinator Yejin to plan precision strikes against swarm command vessels. The Nethex crystal ships could fire across entire solar systems. But the timing had to be perfect to support operations in other theaters. At Kesara, War Leader Bo-Ra coordinated with Chief Tactical Officer Sungwon to plan swarm attacks that would confuse the enemy while supporting the other fleets. The Thrax fighters were faster than anything in space, but they needed to strike at exactly the right moment. All fleets report ready, Communications Specialist Minho announced from the Wanderer. Quantum network is stable. Coordination protocols are active. Captain Hyun-woo took a deep breath. The next few hours would determine whether the Alliance could truly fight as one force, or whether they would fall back into old patterns of independent action. All fleets, commence simultaneous assault, he ordered. Across 3 star systems, the greatest coordinated battle in galactic history began. The Scarith charged into battle at Morketh just as Nethex crystal beams reached across space at Velnok. Thrax fighters swarmed enemy formations at Kesara, while human coordinators tracked the ebb and flow of combat across all theaters. The Void Swarm responded with its own coordination, but the mechanical minds struggled to process 3 battles happening at once. When they adapted to the Scarith assault, the Nethex struck from unexpected angles. When they countered the precision attacks, the Thrax overwhelmed them with numbers. Enemy adaptation algorithms are overloading, Dr. Kyung-ho reported excitedly. They cannot process this much tactical information simultaneously. The tide of battle began to turn. For the first time since the war began, Alliance forces were advancing instead of retreating. Swarm ships began to malfunction as their coordination networks became confused by contradictory data. But just as victory seemed within reach, long-range sensors detected something that made everyone's blood run cold. New contact detected, Navigator So Young reported, her voice tight with worry. Massive swarm fleet approaching from galactic core. Size, unknown. It is larger than anything we have seen before. The holographic display showed a cloud of contacts so dense it looked like a moving nebula. As the sensors focused, the true scale became clear. Millions of ships were heading directly for Alliance space, and at their center was a vessel the size of a small moon. The Central Intelligence, Dr. Kyung-ho whispered. The swarm's primary command unit. Captain Hyun-woo stared at the display, calculating distances and arrival times. How long until it reaches Alliance space? 72 hours, Tactical Coordinator Yejin replied. And it appears to be heading for Earth's location. The humans had revealed themselves to the Void Swarm by coordinating the Alliance victories. Now the mechanical plague was coming to eliminate the source of its confusion by destroying humanity's homeworld. The Alliance faced a terrible choice. Abandon their new allies to protect their own worlds, or risk everything in a desperate defense of a planet most of them had never seen. The decision would determine not just Earth's fate, but whether the galaxy's greatest warriors could truly become something greater than they had ever been before.